This is something that you've seen a lot of now of interest in the capital markets, which is that folks in the industry have generally started to go on side quests. I don't want to do side quests. I want to do main quests. The main quest is Bitcoin and Bitcoin accumulation. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff around Bitcoin, and we'll evaluate things that can be net accretive to our company as well. But for you, the investor, my vision is lemonade stand economics. You see the energy going in, you see the hash rate coming out, and you see the Bitcoin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Blockware podcast. We have a massive episode today. I'm proud to welcome Matt Prusak of American Bitcoin. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mitch, it's great to be here.
Super excited to talk. American Bitcoin, I love the branding. It's been really fascinating to kind of watch you guys come onto the scene over the last couple months. Can we start by just give the origin story? Because I know you guys are a subsidiary of Hut 8. What was the plan with spinning off American Bitcoin?
American Bitcoin as a company is sort of the culmination of a few different ideas. First is a pure play mining business, giving access to the exahash and network growth and sort of the block subsidy that comes from being a miner, and coupling that with some of the really interesting things we've seen on the digital asset treasury side as well for Bitcoin hodl and building a fortress balance sheet over there. And so you might think of it this way. At American Bitcoin, we were taking what we believe to be the best parts of mining and the best parts of a treasury and combining that into one company. And we're calling this model an accumulator. And the reason why it's an accumulator is because you can blend down your cost basis of that hodl with the mining, but you're also able to take part in all these exciting capital markets tools that you get from playing into the treasury world. So for us, this became a day one accumulation vehicle to maximize Bitcoin per share using some of the superpowers that already existed in the industry.
Yeah, I think it's a great combination. We'll unpack this deep, both sides of it, right? Because like you alluded to, the mining allows you to actually lower your cost basis because you're using energy and hash to produce Bitcoin at a discount. So while the just kind of, I don't want to call them vanilla Bitcoin treasury companies, but those that are just buying Bitcoin directly, they're getting it for $120,000 a coin now, where if you're mining, you're able to produce it for a much steeper discount. So we have these two kind of vehicles you're going to accumulate Bitcoin with, the mining operations and then the treasury operations. Let's focus on the mining. What does American Bitcoin's mining operation look like today?
American Bitcoin's mining operation today is about 25 exahash. So we have facilities around North America. We've got some very, very large facilities we've just energized in Texas. Our marquee site is called Vega. These are brand new liquid cooled machines, 13-ish joules per terahash, future-proofed, if you will, as we're already thinking about the next halving. It's a few years away, but it will be here before we know it. So we were very thoughtful in the type of machines we acquired, knowing that we want these things to go the distance. So our mining fleet is a diverse variety of machines, about 25 exahash, and with very good power rates. We've got machines that are able to leverage surplus power in Texas and a few other geographies in a way that gives us a competitive advantage in terms of Bitcoin accumulation.
That sounds amazing. And I noticed on one of your recent press releases, you're getting your average watts per terahash down. I think it was at 15 watts per terahash, I believe.
Yeah, so today we're averaging about 16 joules per terahash. This is pretty solid for our industry. You've seen Moore's Law. You've seen the advent of new technologies that continue the pace of progress of mining efficiency. We wanted to be at the leading edge of that curve, but in a very thoughtful way. For years, historically, I've been at US Bitcoin Corp. This was a predecessor company, and then at Hut 8. And we were always getting asked, when are you going to buy machines? When are you going to buy machines? But we were very thoughtful about these capital expenditures, waiting for the moment to come when we could get the maximal efficiency. So today, buying machines at about 13 joules per terahash. Obviously, there's been new and exciting machines that are even more efficient. We're certainly going to be interested in looking at those too. But this blended our overall efficiency basis down to about 16, correct?
Yeah, that's very strategic. I always think about that. It's almost like a dollar cost average with Bitcoin. If you're constantly acquiring Bitcoin, if Bitcoin's price goes down, you're able to get a lower cost basis. Acquiring miners is kind of the same way. New miners come out that are more efficient. You scoop those up and then bring down the entire average of your fleet's efficiency.
You're exactly right. So mining is an interesting industry in that you do have enormous capital expenditure and potentially some delay from when you buy the machines relative to when you turn them on. We were able to shortcut this. And what we did was structure a deal with one of our vendors where the machines were already being placed into service with them as a hosting client of Hut 8. And we were then able to energize or activate these machines onto the American Bitcoin balance sheet. So rather than the traditional, wire the money, wait 6 months for it to come on the slow boat and then energize, we were able to shrink that time in such a manner that the minute we wanted to mine, we were able to mine. And this, to me, is one of the competitive advantages that we get from this Hut 8 relationship. Hut 8's been building these sites and the energy infrastructure for years, and American Bitcoin is able to use that platform to really grow our own exahash.
That's fascinating. And that's actually very similar to the model we've created at Blockware for our clients, because time is money. And if you buy a machine and it doesn't come online for months down the line, during these bull markets, you could miss a lot of key moments of profitability. So we have our marketplace to allow Blockware hosted mining clients to purchase miners that are already online, immediately energizing those machines. They're earning Bitcoin the same day. It sounds like you guys have found a way to do that at American Bitcoin.
Yeah, mining to me is all about minimizing flash to bang. You want to get things out there and then immediately have the impact. Bitcoin is not that old an industry. Bitcoin mining, I should say. Industrial scale Bitcoin mining has been around for less than 10 years. If you're thinking marquee sites and large operations, and in that span of time, 6 months is a pretty material percentage of the overall timeline of the whole industry. And so anything we can do to shave down the build times and shave down the energization timeline is an advantage to us as a company. I mean, the next halving is going to be here before you know it, and that mathematical schedule is ruthless when it comes to the mining business.
Right, it definitely is. Yeah, 2.5 years. It's definitely going to be here. It feels like we just had the last halving, and the other one's already like within eyesight.
It did. It did.
Speak a little more about the actual relationship here between American Bitcoin and Hut 8. So you have, if I'm picturing a mining facility, you've got the transformers and you've got all of the energy infrastructure, the containers. Correct me if I'm wrong. All of that is kind of on the balance sheet of Hut 8. And then American Bitcoin, the ASICs and the Bitcoin, that's on your balance sheet, correct?
Correct. American Bitcoin is pursuing an asset light model. What that means is that the only thing we really want to be deploying capital into are the ASICs and into Bitcoin purchases. I don't really want to hold transformers on the balance sheet or substations or voltage equipment, et cetera. All critical to running a successful mine, but we've been able to really divide and conquer with Hut 8 on that approach. Hut 8 is expanded from Bitcoin mining into just being a large scale new energy type company developer. They do AI, high performance computing, also known as HPC. They're doing Bitcoin mining. We're there, obviously, they're core tenant on that. And we're able to work with them in the way that a traditional data center company can work with its operator. And this, to me, is an unlock for us because it allows us to really put capital towards what gets people excited, which is the ASICs.
Yeah, I agree. And I think something that got people stumped a couple years ago was somewhat of a disconnect between the performance of Bitcoin and quote unquote mining stocks. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that many of them are data center operators. They're making a spread on energy and they're not necessarily like directly Bitcoin correlated. But I really like how American Bitcoin, you've kind of segmented that part of the business off. So holding ASICs and holding Bitcoin is like the only assets on the balance sheet. You're going to be pretty strongly correlated to Bitcoin. And so for an investor like myself who wants maximum Bitcoin exposed volatility, like ABTC is the perfect choice. But if you're less risk seeking and you want kind of more steady, predictable cash flows without all the volatility of the Bitcoin exposure, then Hut 8, that would probably be more suited for an investor like that.
You're exactly right. You could think of it as there being two businesses in this world. There's bundling and then there's unbundling. American Bitcoin and Hut 8 is the unbundling of all these assets. We've taken the exahash, which an investor like you gets very excited about. We've taken the Bitcoin accumulation idea and we've put that in a vehicle, ABTC on NASDAQ, very accessible, really philosophically aligned with what you're looking for. At the same time, this frees up Hut 8 on more of the risk curve. So they're able to go more focus on the data center exposure and that sort of thing. And that risk profile, that return profile, also tremendously exciting, but has a slightly different philosophical bent. And so an investor can now pick and choose. And obviously, these companies are interrelated. We've got this sibling relationship, a parent co, a subco, a subsidiary aspect. But you, the investor, you can surmise what's going to make American Bitcoin go up. If Bitcoin's ripping, if we're seeing great performance, if folks are getting excited about the network and about mining, American Bitcoin will benefit from that. If you're thinking about data centers and mastering the electron and nuclear reactors and HPC and things like that, well, then Hut 8 is probably your jam. So you're able to really pick and choose what the risk profile is that suits your particular vision.
Yeah, I love that distinction, and that gets me very excited. Do you hate taxes and love Bitcoin?
Well, do I have the product for you? New guidelines from the Big Beautiful Bill allow for Bitcoin miners to depreciate 100% of their hardware costs in year one. That means every dollar you spend on Bitcoin mining hardware, you can write off instantly. If you have $100,000 in income you want to offset, you can purchase $100,000 of Bitcoin mining hardware and offset it. Blockware makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. You can purchase a Bitcoin miner hosted at one of our data centers, and we will operate it for you. You get to acquire Bitcoin every single day at a discount to the market price, while also receiving major tax benefits. For more information, click the link in the description or go to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/tax. Again, that's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/tax.
I want to now go to the next layer of the Bitcoin accumulation strategy, which is the Treasury operations. Obviously, the pioneer of this has been Strategy. They now have multiple different preferred equity options to allow them to raise capital and increase Bitcoin per share. What are you guys looking at in terms of Treasury operations to grow your Bitcoin per share?
Yeah, so Treasury is layer two of our model. So you can think about the American Bitcoin model as having three layers. Layer one is mining, layer two is Treasury and capital markets, and layer three is what we call ecosystem amplification. We'll get to that later on, I'm sure. So focusing now on layer two, this is where going public was such an unlock for us. So we went public in September of 2025, and that for us was really the opportunity to play at the big leagues when it came to the equity. American Bitcoin equity, now freely traded, accessible again via NASDAQ. This for us enabled a wide array of financial tooling that Michael Saylor at Strategy had pioneered. He evaluated things like ATMs, at the market offerings, convertibles, all sorts of interesting debt instruments. These are things that the everyday American doesn't have access to as Bitcoin accumulation strategies, and we do. And so not only are we able to then blend down our price with the mining, but if we want to go by spot in the market, we have the backing of the capital markets in a way that the everyday investor can't possibly compete with. And so for us, we're able to harness these tools, give our investors exposure to those tools. It's an interesting array. There have been a lot of folks on trying this strategy. I believe our value proposition is unique. The mining angle gives us, again, a blending down opportunity. There are many ways to acquire Bitcoin, but they're usually predicated upon buying spot. We can buy spot Bitcoin too. We can go out of the marketplace and buy it, and that's something that we often can do. But for us, it's only part of the three-layer strategy. So the capital markets angle, the treasury angle, building that fortress balance sheet, philosophically not wanting to sell, keeping every Satoshi, finding ways to get access to new pools of capital to then go get more Bitcoin. It all feeds back into each other in a way that's really exciting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What's kind of the calculus you're performing there? If you raise additional capital through the public markets, which, as you mentioned, not available to everyday retail person, we can't get the issue convertible notes and raise millions and millions of dollars at favorable terms to buy Bitcoin. So a huge advantage being a public operator in this regard. When you raise that capital, how are you deciding, let's buy some more ASICs or let's buy Bitcoin spot?
Right. So at American Bitcoin, mining is the engine and the balance sheet is the mission. So we're running an accumulator, which is converting American energy into Bitcoin, and then we're going to compound that with the treasury. The reason why this model works is that we're pure play and we're asset light. We're spending models on ASICs, we're spending money on Bitcoin, not substations. So Hut 8 can carry the infrastructure, and then we're able to really focus on our superpower, which is the Bitcoin accumulation. So HODL is our default. We're reserving the flexibility to how we want to acquire. You mentioned a few different of these instruments at the market offering. We have a roughly $2.1 billion at the market tool that we can then use to issue shares to buy Bitcoin. That's been fairly compelling. But our North Star at American Bitcoin remains maximum Bitcoin per share. Mining drives it, Treasury compounds it. When it comes to public markets, we're able to then use the volatility to our advantage. So when attention is high and spreads are tight, we can turn on that ATM. We can ladder size prudently into the market. We can then harvest those volatility premiums into Bitcoin and just continue to grow our HODL in a way that, to your point, the everyday American cannot do.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. And the asset light element there is key because that really lowers the opportunity cost of mining. If you're not having to buy all of the infrastructure around the machine and you could just buy the machine, your hurdle rate in Bitcoin terms becomes much, much lower.
This is something that you've seen a lot of now interest in the capital markets, which is that folks in the industry have generally started to go on side quests. I don't want to do side quests. I want to do main quests. The main quest is Bitcoin and Bitcoin accumulation. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff around Bitcoin, and we'll evaluate things that can be net accretive to our company as well. But for you, the investor, my vision is lemonade stand economics. You see the energy going in, you see the hash rate coming out, you see the Bitcoin. And on the capital markets, very similarly, you see the financial instruments that we've got available. You see how we're deploying those instruments in pursuit of accumulating Bitcoin, and we're going from there. So there's a few different angles, but all of them kind of combine. And to your point, being asset light allows us to really just focus on that stack. We have a very lean team. You don't need a whole lot of personnel. You don't need a whole lot in-house if your objective is to accumulate Bitcoin, and we're acting accordingly.
Yeah. One of the biggest benefits that Bitcoin mining has received this year has been the big, beautiful bill bringing back 100% bonus depreciation. Is that something you guys are looking to take advantage of?
The bonus depreciation aspect of the one big beautiful bill to me is indicative of a wider theme of this administration being pro crypto and being pro Bitcoin. So that's an exciting thing for us. It's certainly something we're looking at. But if you think more broadly, this is a pro crypto administration. This is a pro energy administration. And we sit at the nexus of both of these things. And so as we go out and we decide how we want to engage with the White House and with public policy at the local, state, and federal level, it's night and day from what it would have been 2 years ago. There's a lot of alignment between the policymakers, between the business folks. How do we ensure that this industry stays here in the United States? How do we ensure the hash rate can be here in the United States? How do we create the jobs here in the United States? We're all guided by that principle. I mean, the name American Bitcoin really tells you right up front what we're all about. And to your point around the depreciation, that's one more example of what the folks in government have done to really get us excited about doing business here in the United States.
Yeah, I think people don't give this administration enough credit when it comes to this, because at the start of the year, there were about 65 publicly traded companies that held Bitcoin. Now it's 200, and that's just in 2025. And to me, it's not a coincidence that we got a pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto administration, and all of a sudden you get this flood of public companies starting to stack Bitcoin.
I agree. Bitcoin is freedom technology. You have something here where it's a currency, it's a store of value, it's an escape hatch from currency debasement and things like that. Having a government that's actually in favor of this, I don't even think folks really comprehended that was on the table. And so as an investor in the sector, as an operator in the sector, it is really an exciting time. And this is something that will provide opportunities for Americans above and beyond just hodling. Right. To your point, job creation, going from dozens of publicly traded companies to now maybe hundreds of companies with Bitcoin on the balance sheet. This is a really nice thing to have here in the United States, and I'd rather it be here than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I second that. I mean, I saw firsthand like some of the challenges we had to face with the previous administration, putting up roadblocks simply but for no reason other than the fact that we're a Bitcoin company. And so having the green light as a business to really go all in and know you're not going to get rug pulled, you're not going to have any sort of roadblocks, I think it's going to do very well for America in the long term, because like you said, we want Bitcoin here. We don't want Bitcoin in other countries. We want America to be the leader.
We do, and that is a great power, and also it's a great responsibility, right? To have Bitcoin truly be in the United States, you do need energy infrastructure, and so it's not just about the capital markets and securities laws and things like that, though those have become much more favorable to crypto. It's really about getting aligned with the energy policymakers as well, because if you want to have Bitcoin custodied here, that's one thing, but if you want to have it mined here, that's something else entirely, and that's where you're really actually starting to see the electron and the energy development play a significant role in crypto as it pertains to Bitcoin in the United States.
Yeah, I'm fairly optimistic that, the doomer mindset would be, oh, well, you have a Bitcoin administration now, but 4 years from now, if there's a different, group of people in power that are anti-Bitcoin, well, a lot of the progress could be unwound. But I think we are at a point with the industry where we can make so much progress in 4 years that if you got a hostile administration in 2028, like it might not be able to matter as much at that point, because so much progress could be made in the meantime. I mean, for example, like Bitcoin is fundamentally good for energy grids. There was a huge FUD a couple years ago that Bitcoin mining wastes energy. You still see it around somewhat, but Bitcoin miners actually provide energy producers with an incentive to produce more power. Bitcoin miners are consuming waste power, they're monetizing stranded energy, and they're strengthening grids. And so I think, if we get 4 solid years of this thesis actually playing out and proving itself, then I think that will really help the industry going forward.
You do. And the other thing that's making Bitcoin so interesting and crypto so interesting in the United States is just demographics. Younger people are more likely to buy Bitcoin than they are gold. You might consider it in many ways a digital gold. And even when you go to the Hill and you meet with policymakers, one of the key groups that actually runs DC are staffers. Obviously, the representatives are super important, the senators, et cetera. But the staffers are the ones who are often really crafting legislation. Staffers like Bitcoin. Staffers own a little bit of crypto in their wallets, right? And that to me has really changed over the years. These are fairly young folks, oftentimes people that had a degree in government, want to do some time in the public service, and meeting with them. And not only do they kind of get the thesis, but they actually own a little bit themselves. And the best way to learn is obviously by doing. That is a big change. And so even in a few years, were there to be an administrative change, were there to be a political climate that shifts in a direction that you might think is net harmful, my attitude is we've already seen crypto permeate through a lot of the policymakers at the grassroots level, and that is here to stay. And so as I've met with people from both of the main political parties, you'd think this was partisan. It's actually less partisan than you might think. There are obviously a few standard bearers in each of the parties who maybe speak for their team in a way that could seem aggressive or anti-crypto or anti-Bitcoin. But across the board, folks have generally started to realize that crypto is here to stay, and we should have it responsibly done here in the United States. It's not going anywhere. It's freedom technology. It's good for the United States. So how can we regulate it, or how can we advise it in a way that allows us to really grow that business in America? I think they're on board. And we're probably one of the few industries, cryptos and Bitcoin specifically, where we put our hand up and say, hey, maybe regulate us. Tell us the ins and the outs, or what is out of bounds, because if you can give us that kind of foundation, we're then going to be able to work with traditional financial institutions. We'll be able to get our equity out there. We're going to be able to get things like stable coins recently out there. We just need rules of the road. We can handle them, but we need to know what it takes to drive here. And if you can do that for us, we'll do great things for you.
Right. Yeah. Literally, the industry was just wanting guidelines, because for so long there was no clear roadmap on anything. And it doesn't surprise me that that's been your experience in DC with the staffers being pro Bitcoin, because I do think, Gen Z gets a lot of slack for, people stereotype at Gen Z as, they don't work hard, they're lazy, whatever, like addicted to social media. But Gen Z has gotten the short end of the stick when it comes to the economy. Housing prices are unaffordable, lots of student debt, lots of issues that, to me, Bitcoin is the obvious solution. And so it gives me hope that some of the young staffers on Capitol Hill are kind of seeing it the same way.
No, again, if you want to see the future, there's that quote from William Gibson, which is, the future's here, it's just not evenly distributed, right? And you'll find these pockets of crypto people, even in a place like DC. And you'll find it with younger staffers, and you'll find it in these places that gives you some hope, in places that you're not necessarily expecting to receive a warm welcome. And it's very promising.
Yeah. One of the things as America's Bitcoin miner, and we can shift towards layer 3 now, because layer 1, mining operations, layer 2, treasury operations, layer 3, ecosystem, innovation, R&D. One thing that I want to see from the industry is more chips produced in the United States, because a lot of them come from Asia. Is this something that American Bitcoin is looking into?
We're excited about the opportunity for chips to be manufactured in the United States. There's two camps on that. There are American designed chips. There's a few of these companies out there, you'd be familiar with them, that are really doing the groundwork to create designs here in the United States. That's very promising. We're attentive to that. We're looking at their schematics. We're looking at their production timelines, et cetera. So that to me is as American as apple pie, and we're very bullish on those folks. There's also the overseas manufacturers. They historically have also manufactured overseas, unsurprisingly, where they're doing the designs. There has been somewhat of a movement for them to start moving manufacturing into the United States. I give credit to President Trump and some of his trade activities to really give the sticks and the carrots for them to do that. I think no matter whether it's a U.S. manufactured chip from a foreign designer, or if it's a fully soup to nuts American chip designed and manufactured here in the United States, it's a win for the industry, and it's a win for the United States. So we're looking at how best to harness both opportunities here. Net, it's good for our business. It's good for American Bitcoin to have American chip production. We want to do our part to support that as the opportunities arise, and just be a thoughtful fiduciary. Right? For us, it goes back to what you were saying initially. Mining is CapEx intensive. You take these multi-$100 million swings on chips and you need them to work. And so when it comes to new chips, it's a little bit of a measure twice, cut once situation. We've run pilots, we've done the very low key, we've done some bigger pilots, but we're always evaluating the opportunities here. And when things make sense, we'll move ahead with the urgency that's characteristic of our business.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to me, it's like the last stack of the industry that I really want to see brought to the United States, because a lot of progress has been made over the last 5 years. The 2021 China mining ban was the tipping point. A lot of the hash rate in the world was in China before they basically shot themselves in the foot. We've made so much progress to make America the undisputed #1 place for Bitcoin mining. The chip element is kind of the last missing piece of that puzzle.
I fully agree.
One thing I want to hear you speak on a little more is the alignment between American values and Bitcoin. This is something I wrote a book, and this is a key chapter of it, because I definitely agree that the Constitution and Bitcoin kind of go hand in hand. The Bitcoin white paper is almost like a 21st century Constitution. So can you talk a little bit more about this alignment in values and what it means to you in American Bitcoin?
I can. So for us, obviously, naming the company American Bitcoin, our ethos from day one. But there's a few ways in which Bitcoin and American values really go together. Freedom, running on open ledgers, sound money is a first principle, and fundamentally the idea that hard work deserves hard money. Americans are working very hard. They want that hard work to be rewarded in a store of value that they can actually retain the value of their hard work. That is a service that Bitcoin miners and the Bitcoin industry is providing. To me, that's a very American thing to do. We're putting in proof of work to help support their actual work. It's a synergistic relationship. And there's so many ways in which I believe the American story and the Bitcoin story are working together. You can think about things like free speech, free transactions, uncensored blockchains, the ability to transact value freely. These are things that I think really align the stories. There's a joke about how if cash were invented today, it would probably be banned. The idea that you could transact value with effectively anonymous pieces of paper would make the government very uneasy, and they probably wouldn't want to do that. Yet cash is a pretty critical part of our society. Bitcoin is much the same way, except new and improved in so many ways that really matter. Obviously, no one's printing more Bitcoin the way that they're able to print more cash. It's pretty exciting. In many ways, you could think about that the American frontier never closed. It's just moved on chain.
I like that quote. That makes a lot of sense. To me, the quote-unquote American dream of being able to buy a house, start a family young, raise children, kind of get out of life what you put in, right? That, to me, is very much made accessible with Bitcoin now, because I can have assurance that the value I produce for society today will not only retain itself into the future with Bitcoin, but it'll actually multiply. And to me, that's kind of the digital embodiment of the American dream.
I fully agree. Wide open markets, building something to last, building infrastructure, creating open networks, beating these closed cartels. To me, this is as American as it can possibly get. And that's why for us, working with my partners, I've got Eric Trump as a co-founder and chief strategy officer. We've got Don Jr. as an investor and an advisor. They've been very excellent partners at articulating that story, right? Really trying to get the Bitcoin concept out to the everyday American. Bitcoin folks, we get it, you get it, I get it. There could be a tendency to preach to the converted and really look at each other and say, are you in? Because I'm in. We're in. It's been a decade. We get it. The thesis has been borne out. It's certainly no longer dollar Bitcoin. Things have started to move in the TradFi direction. But there are still wide swaths of the American population that just haven't really gotten the Bitcoin narrative. They're seeing the impact of inflation now in their checkbook and in their bank account, but they don't know really what the alternatives are. And that's something where Bitcoin can play a role. And so we've been able to really build a brand and a platform that gives folks that opportunity.
Yeah, 100% agree. And it's super exciting to see guys like Eric and Donald Trump Jr. really amplify that message, because it's true. The founding fathers were very much opposed to central banking, and the current monetary system is not American in any way. The dollar's not American. We don't get to, as individuals, nobody at the Federal Reserve represents the American people. The current monetary system is so far removed from what it should be under a truly American world. And Bitcoin is that. And Bitcoin solves a lot of these problems that everyday Americans are facing. And I think we do preach to the choir a lot with Bitcoin. So having guys with such massive profiles, massive positions of power within our government, understanding this and being able to articulate that, hey, Bitcoin is actually more American than the dollar. I think that's a really good thing.
It is. Again, Bitcoin is freedom technology. And so as Americans are thinking about what they want to do to store that value, as you said, the founding fathers maybe had some hesitancy around central banking, et cetera. I'm not asking for an overthrow. I'm just asking for an alternative. And if we're able to provide that alternative, folks can make up their mind one way or another as to where they want to store their value. Obviously, we run a Bitcoin company with a formidable Bitcoin treasury. You know what my bet is in terms of storing value. But the first idea is that good decisions come from good options. So let's give folks that option.
Yeah, 100% agree. Lastly, I want to close out with your thoughts on the market right now. We've historically some people are in this camp of 4-year cycles. Some people aren't. I think the 4-year cycles are over, but if they're not, Q4 would be the time where we maybe have a blow off top. So where's your head kind of at over the next 12 months? Where do you expect the Bitcoin market to go?
I think so. Thinking about cycles, the idea of having a 4-year cycle on like a 12-year-old project roughly is a bit aggressive. Time will tell, and it would be nice to get a few more reps in before we start deciding the fate of the asset class over a 4-year cycle. Patience is rewarded. That being said, I do think there's some behavioral aspects. I think you've seen Bitcoin perform very well in Q4 historically. As they say, October is Uptober. There are all kinds of catalysts for why that's the case. We're in an interesting moment today where NASDAQ and tech-related companies are ripping and gold is ripping. I don't think we've really seen that one before in a while. So for us now to sit where Bitcoin sits at the nexus of a store of value argument like gold or silver, but also an exciting technological paradigm, we're kind of benefiting from both narratives. I mean, this is the center of a Venn diagram that in today's capital markets you want to be at. Where that goes from here, early days. What I would like to see first is Bitcoin achieve an all-time high in gold terms. Bitcoin is at an all-time high roughly in dollar terms, which is great, but that is partially Bitcoin going up and the dollar going down. And the debasement trade, as they're calling it, where folks pile into gold, silver, hard currencies, et cetera. I get that. And so for Bitcoin to really validate its thesis, let's hit new all-time highs in those trad store values and then go upwards from there.
Yeah, I totally agree in it. It looks like it's about to break out. Bitcoin made an all-time high in gold terms back in 2021, and we've kind of pushed up against that level here in the last 12 months, but we haven't solidly broken through. I think it's coming. I'm super excited, and that's definitely a chart I'm looking at as well.
I'm bullish. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think 2026 is going to be a great year. The cycle people are going to be in disbelief when we face the fifth consecutive positive year, so I'm super bullish. Matt, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Is there any final words you want to give the audience or anywhere you want to send them?
We at the American Bitcoin team could not be more excited for what we're doing. We believe in the mission. Bitcoin per share is our North Star. Our infrastructure is big. Our jobs are American. We're very happy to be here and doing what we do. And folks are happy to follow along on X at ABTC. Matt Prusak is my handle on X as well. Feel free to shoot me a DM and excited to take this journey with you all.
Thank you, Matt. Links to Matt's X and the American Bitcoin X will be in the description. Everybody go check it out and make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.